Before Seraphina made her debut, I thought that she would be an interesting and a fun character to use. Interesting? Yeah. Fun? Yes and no. If you want to see what I'm talking about, feel free to stick around for the showcase. But first, let's go check out what she can do and how to build her. So with her talent, her attack and crit are increased, she isn't affected by melee damage reduction, ignores obstruction from enemy units when moving, and does not consume mobility when moving through terrains occupied by units. She applies Cunning Toxin to enemies passed through, so their debuff duration is increased by 1 turn, and chance to be critically hit is increased by 20%. When this effect is applied again, its duration is refreshed and it upgrades to Death's Erosion, inflicting an additional effect. After taking action, now this is gonna sound crazy, they will immediately die, but in regular content, the enemy will take a lot of fixed damage. Both Cunning Toxin and Death's Erosion both ignores immunity and cannot be dispelled for 2 turns. I know that instant death effect sounds really busted, like really broken, but you gotta trust me when I say that it is not easy to pull off because of her 2 major flaws. 1, her mobility really sucks, and 2, she can't apply enough debuff on her own. Her best class would be Infantry 100%. You will be able to give her the best equips necessary for her to really improve her gameplay. However, if you want to go Assassin class of your own volition, then that's totally fine. Everyone has their own unique gameplay, and I'll still provide the best equips so that you guys aren't left out. For the Master Stones for the armor, you want HP attack and defense, headwear, HP attack and defense or magic defense, then weapon accessory, HP attack and skill. With the Arena Stones, I really recommend going with an offensive set. Her best soldier would be the Earth Elf Knight, because when you land a crit, you are able to inflict 1 strong debuff as well as stealing the enemy's buff. And you really want those debuffs for the way how her talent works. You want to play around that. If you don't have these guys upgraded, then the Mist Dancer can work fine too. It's just that with them, as long as you crit, you're able to inflict a debuff. The Faceless Soldier will be her strongest soldier for damage. You can use that Gunner to deal with flyers, and then you have the Fang Guard, who are really balanced. So they're going to be her best defensive soldier, as they have increased HP. Now Seraphina is going to want equips that offer debuffs and mobility, or you can also do just damage as well. So her best weapon will be the Demon Slayer in her infantry class. It's her best in slot. What it does is that it dispels a buff while applying a debuff when she crits, just by dealing any form of damage, so that even goes for AoEs. There's no other weapon similar to this, so if you don't have this one, I would just go with damage instead. So you want Crystal Stinger for the crits and defense ignore, Bone Crusher to disable armor or defense drop, and Mimir for sustain. Anything else to increase her attack will be fine in the meantime if you don't have any of those. There are going to be other equips like the Wind Cutter Dagger that also reduces their enemy's defense, but that is a very lucky chance. It's like 50%, so not really exactly reliable. So it is something that you can use as an assassin because you don't have anything else better that also applies debuff. Hydro Bolt is the same thing, but it lowers damage dealt. But if you have the Starstorm Impaler, it's one of the newest weapons that got released, then that's going to be your best pick as an assassin, because it lowers the target's defense by 30% before battle, as long as their HP is above 80%. So you can treat it as like a worse version of the Crystal Stinger. And speaking of which, Crystal Stinger is also a really good option to use instead. Otherwise, anything else to increase your attack is fine. For the armor, in her infantry class, Forbidden Battle Armor is the best choice to use to reduce your damage taken from single target attacks, but you can use the Time-At Armor for the magic reduction as long as you're in mixed forces. If not, then Aeolus to take less range damage or Bloodline to take less melee damage. As an assassin, Last Rites is the #1 choice, then it falls in line to Azure Legend, then the Lizard Skin. For the helmet, as an infantry, Tear for more damage. For survivability, you got Winged Twilight and Aeneas helmets. The Vampire Mask can also be fine to reduce the enemy's defense. As an assassin, the Night Owl can be okay, but it's way much better to have it on actual AoE attackers. If you just want it for the extra skill damage, which is only like 5% compared to the tier, which is a 10%. Also the fact that assassins can't use the tier anyways. But the helmet also does provide debuffs that you can use, like Doomsday Herald for the heal block if you end your turn within 2 blocks of the enemy. Jormungandr does the same thing, but it lowers their damage. If you have the Hydro Bolt, then there's no point in using this. For support options, you have the King's Crown to offer damage increase for your teammates. Then survivability options include Flower for healing if your HP is below half, then Snow Beanie can be okay to use for the defense. With the accessory, now I am gonna list a lot of things right here, so just be wary I guess. Only in her infantry class can she use the wings for the constant insane mobility. You can also use Apex Boots so that you can actually combine this with the Breeze enchant. But the wings is overall better since you don't need the Breeze enchant and you don't have to rely on the RNG aspect. So it just makes sense to use a different enchant instead. You want either of these 100%. If not, then for damage, it'll either be Judge, Slayer, or Prisoner. There's also Twilight Star for fixed damage, which is great for PvP if you want to ignore guard. Situational options are Bloodthirsty Nail to be immune to silence, Edge of Memories for skill cooldown, and Shin Guard for defense. If you want, there are debuffs accessory like the Apostle of Doom, which is something that you'll see when people use Ymir. It's only attack and int, defense, and magic defense. Those are the only debuffs that you can apply, but it's random by 30%. It's still really nice to use since it's guaranteed, but you have to actively be attacking. And it's going to be the same situation with an upcoming equip in the next updates. It disables accessory in PvP, but increases the enemy's damage taken in regular content. So this one can be fine to use on Seraphina and even Ymir as well. Some bulk options include Overlord and Butterfly. I really recommend having Overlord the most so that you have immunity to attack down and mobility down. With the enchants, if you are not using the wings accessory, then I highly recommend going Breeze, especially for PvP. In regular content, you can get away without it if you really want to, so instead, you can do something like Blazing Sun for the extra crit damage, otherwise you can use Full Moon to maximize your fixed damage from a 3C. As for the enchant stats that you want, it will be HP, attack, and defense, and even magic defense too. Have one with defense and have one with magic defense, or you can do defense for PvP since there are a lot of physical attackers out there, but for the accessory, go for crit instead. But if you want something defensive, then that's totally fine. But just always remember, mainly just focus on having a bunch of HP and attack. It's much more easier to get, since rolling for the perfect enchant is luck heavy. Even just going for HP and attack is already stressful enough, no less getting a good roll too. Alright, so hopefully you guys have an idea on how to build your Seraphina. She can be hard to build without the right equips, which is why I would consider her a high investment character. It can be okay to just go for damage if you know that you're going to pair her with teammates who can apply a lot of debuffs. So having said that, let's go ahead and check out her first awakening stage for anyone struggling with it. So for this stage, you're going to be up against Tabris, Patricia, and then Taranto. So for the skills that you want that at against for the extra movement. You can use this one to attack safely, and then backstab because you can do a bunch of fixed damage. You can replace the at again with this passive right here, so that you just do a bunch of damage. If you are not using ranged soldiers, then you're going to want Sun Slash. The best soldiers that you want is the Deck Gunner. You're going to have a Breeze dealing with the enemies in here. I guess the Catapult can be okay, since Archer does a lot of damage to flowers, but obviously they're not really strong. The Faceless to just do a bunch of damage. Cavalry can be fine as an attacking soldier, and Fang Guard who are well balanced. They can reflect melee attacks and can heal after battle, but it's only like a little bit. Now on the first turn right here, if you do run away, Tabris will actually run back so that she uses her assist skill. And you do just want to run away to the defensive terrain, let her come to you, and also because her thing makes her invisible. So yeah, just retreat all the way to the defensive terrain on the left or right, doesn't matter where you go. Now I think right here that she doesn't, yeah, it looks like that we're not in the exact range to attack her from it, which does really suck. So let's see if I move here, will that work? So it does look like that I can attack safely just by standing on this terrain. Now doing this is pretty tricky to just stay on the defensive terrain and making sure that Tablet isn't on it, because she does have a really good movement. If you are able to do what I did, maybe I'm able to do this because I have the winged accessory. If you are able to do this, then congrats. It's not really easy, but don't stress too much over it. Even with the 30%, she'll technically have a 50% defense increase because the deck gunners ignore 50% of her defense, as long as they're on the terrain, or if the enemy are on it too. So with the deck gunners, you have a better chance to really take her out, but I feel like with any other soldiers, some of you guys may struggle. With Patricia, you do want to stay an extra block away because she does have AoEs, so just do that. And just wait for the skills to come back. if you are in the infantry class, attack from 2 blocks. Don't use the skill within 1 block because it does have melee damage reduction, so it's better off to do it within 2 blocks. Even though it can be scary to attack from 2 blocks, just because Patricia can attack very well like that, you'll be able to put out more damage doing so. And so the thing with Tyrantol, by this point, maybe you'll do enough damage to one-shot him. Your stats should be pretty high, Tyrantol not so much. But if your stat isn't, he does apply his talent debuff on you. And what you also gotta know is that for him, if enemies within 3 blocks have this debuff, his stats are increased. So what do? You want to turnstall. Just keep on turnstalling until you reach 1. And so this way, if you do have her at again, you use it and then it'll go away. So when you attack him, he'll no longer have the stat increase. And so that way you can attack him safely. And then he does have a summon, but he can't do anything. So you automatically win. So yeah, Tabitha should really only be the struggle here because she does have a lot of attack. Now you can get lucky with Tabitha and attack her, and hopefully you get that 1 in 3 chance that she does her assist skill first. That's probably going to be your best method if you don't have like the deck gun is upgraded or something like that, or if you can't like one-shot her. So yeah, I would just keep on resetting until eventually that she does that, and then hopefully by the time that you're already able to attack her, you can finish her off right then and there. Patricia shouldn't be that bad, her defense is low, and with Tyrantol, with the buff that you got, you should be able to kill him pretty easily. If not, then do what I did so that his stats doesn't go up. And also just remember that you do have defensive terrain. Tabitha and Tyrantol is not going to be easy to avoid because they can easily move onto it. So just don't stress too much over it. Just as long as you're able to survive a hit from them, that should be hopefully enough. Alright, so her 3C. Now right here is what makes Seraphina feel like a totally different character. The passive on it, after initiating battle, deals fixed damage once to any enemies within 1 ring. Enemies with toxin or erosion cannot be immune to it. Damage dealt is equal to 0.2 times this battle's damage up to 10 times of her attack. It's a single target skill. After attacking, the passive effect fixed damage is doubled and melee soldiers can attack with her. If the enemy already has toxin or erosion, it stuns them before battle for 1 turn. After dealing damage, applies erosion to the target and ignores immunity and cannot be dispelled for 2 turns. Now her 3C passive is game changing. This turns her from being a single target attacker to a mixed attacker, and it is a lot too if you can maximize it. So she can easily deal with enemies who like to group up next to each other. Alright, so if you guys are curious, this is what her 3C animation looks like. Alright, so for the second awakening stage, it is going to be once again one of those few occasions where I do show it off. Mostly just because I feel like Seraphina is a pretty tricky character to use. So here I just set up everything so that the enemies come to me. I did block off Patricia with Andrew because Andrew does have at the against skill, so he's going to come towards you. And so knowing that, you can use Tyrantol's talent to apply the debuff onto him so that he attacks less. And so once it's your turn, you can start up with Seraphina, use it at the end or something. And for me, they do line up, so I was able to easily just get the AoE damage, at least to like 3 of them. Can't really give Angel any kind of debuff besides her own, because Angel's at the end gives him a immunity buff. So knowing that, I do finish him off later. But right after Seraphina does her thing, I do use Patricia to use her AoE on Seraphina, Patricia, and Tyrantol, the enemy side, because they're the only one who can receive any kind of debuff. And so this way, this sets up for Seraphina's talent. They're gonna take a bunch of fixed damage. And so out of that, I do have Tyrantol take Angel's life, and then I just have my own Angel finish him off. And so after that, I just let the carnage unfold. Everyone just dies instantly, Tyrantol just gets counter killed. And so with everyone dead, that leaves Tyrantol summoned. He can't do anything, so a free kill. So yeah, that was the way how I did this. Again, I'm showing this off mainly because Seraphina can be a pretty tricky character to use. So yeah, this was how I dealt with this one, and hopefully it helped you guys out too. Alright, so with all that done, let's go right on into her showcase. So now that we're here, let's check out how she works. Attack and crit or increase is affected by melee damage reduction and ignores obstruction from enemy movements and does not consume mobility when moving through them. She applies Cunning Toxin to the enemies passed through, and what it does is that the debuff is increased by 1 turn, chance to be critically hit is increased by 20%, and when it is applied again, its duration is refreshed, and it upgrades to Death's Erosion. And what that does is that after taking action, if the unit that has at least 4 debuffs, they will die immediately. but that's only in PvP. Otherwise, the enemy will just take a bunch of fixed damage in regular content. Cunning Toxin and Death's Erosion both ignore immunity and cannot be dispelled for 2 turns. So watch, I have Seraphina pass through looks like Leon and Vargas. I'm just gonna end her turn in the enemy zone. So if you look at Leon right now, you can see that Toxin does its own thing. What you gotta really pay attention is the icon. So you see like the skull and bones. And if we do apply it again, so let's end our turn. And look at that. You see that they have like this purple, bluish aura around them. But if we actually like take a look at the debuff itself, it is now a skull head. Now that is quite hard, not very easy, especially for Seraphina on her own. So you really need the right equipment on her. Look at that, I just barely got 4 debuffs on them. So I really hope that you guys were there during the auto build section, because it's there where I tell you guys what she needs in order for her to do all that. So yeah, look at that. It did like what, 16,000 damage? It's crazy stuff. It's crazy stuff actually. And I forgot to mention that you are able to see the amount of debuffs that enemy has. That's only if you have Death Erosion on them, which is something that I really do appreciate. So yeah, we do got one more turn on this, so let's see. Look at that. If Marcus took 2 fixed damage right there, I'm pretty sure he already had the debuff itself. Yeah, if we actually get this too. I didn't even think about that. If we get this, that's even crazier. So yeah, let's see that again. Look at that. Lasting for 2 turns too, so it goes away afterwards. It is really satisfying, I will admit that. It is pretty wild seeing that kind of number. That's even better in PvP. It's just instant death, they just die immediately. You guys realize how broken that is? It is dumb. But over there is where I'll say it's a lot more complicated, because there are like certain maps where it can be too big. Smaller maps is where you'll definitely just more dominate with her, so that she doesn't have to travel as far, because that is one of her main weaknesses. And not just only that, you need the debuffs too. Gotta be lucky with it, so just having the right teammates with her is something that you really want. And not just only that, you also need to watch out for healers too. That's a lot of consideration. Seraphina is not an easy character to use. So yeah, going back, we are going to look at her unique 1C skill. The passive on it, after taking action, gains an opportunity to move a number of blocks equal to the number of blocks moved before battle. So you select one enemy and applies Toxin to them, ignores immunity, cannot be dispelled for 2 turns. Afterwards, buffs on her do not lose their turn duration, and can act again moving 3 blocks. So yeah, this is what I used earlier, so I'm gonna have to apply this on Elwyn, and it marks them with Toxin. And I'm just gonna do something. I'm just gonna use her AoE skill to attack them. And then this is where the crazy part comes in, right? So you guys saw earlier the amount of blocks that she can go. Kind of really similar to what I think, what was her name? Night of Mystery? But yeah, that does have good potential because you can like move so incredibly far. And her talent thing works so well with it too. So that means you can properly position her wherever you want her to be, or just simply have her run away. Going back to the same thing, the skill that you guys saw earlier is obviously an AoE skill. Attacks in a straight line that has a 4 block range. It inflicts Toxin to the enemies for 2 turns, ignores immunity, cannot be dispelled, and applies 1 random powerful debuff. If it crits, you apply another one. This is one of her safer skill, something that she desperately really needs. And what's really surprising is that this is her only AoE skill. Which I mean is all fair in games, right? Her talent can be broken if you actually get her to do something. And you'll notice that it's not really enough, right? So that's why Demon Slayer is one of her best options to use. Unlike most of the other equipments where you have to be in battle to apply those debuffs. So having the Demon Slayer is her best in slot. And also using either the Elf Knight and Mist Dancer. If you crit, you apply a debuff. And so with all of that, you get exactly 4 debuffs if you are lucky to get a crit. If not, then yeah, you'll have to rely a lot on your teammates. And yes, her 3C. This is something that I really wanted to show you guys. Because look at this. It does fixed damage once to any enemies within 1 ring of the target. Enemies with Toxin or Erosion are not immune to it. Damage dealt is equal to 0.2 times of the battle's damage up to 10 times of her attack. After attacking, the passive effect fixed damage is doubled. If you have melee soldiers, they can attack with you. If the enemy already has Toxin or Erosion, it stuns them before battle. After dealing damage, applies Death Erosion to the target for 2 turns. You guys want to see how crazy this damage is? Just take a look, take a look. Okay, so that was 32,000, and now, ooh, 26,000. It does only hit around the enemies that you hit, So in my case, it only hurt Elwyn and Imelda and not Vargas himself. Crazy damage, right? It's a good thing that you can't be immune to it, unless you have her talent debuff. Now keep in mind, I didn't have anything on Seraphina, like no attack buff on her, but if you try to do that without her 3C, it would be a lot less. The passive effect won't be doubled. And it really shows too. Like you can have a buff on Seraphina without using her 3C, but it still won't be as much as if you use her 3C, even without anything on her. Say, we did get the stun, last for 2 turns thanks to her talents, which is kind of funny. But for me, for some reason, I think we can go even higher. I want to see if I can max out that damage, and I know just how to do that. Yes, I haven't done one of these in a very long time. So let's take a look at what Seraphina has. More damage increase, so 40 times 15? I'm not even sure. That number is high, really high. So we got the attack blessing, 30% more damage, 15 more, and 30% attack increase. So this should be more than enough, right? To maximize the 3C fixed damage. So we're gonna cap it out at 10, or no, actually 20% because the 3C doubles it. Alright, so let's see the damage number. So here we go. How much is this? How much is this? 40,000. That is crazy. So look at that. I did not have Seraphina attack until that one point right there. I definitely went way overboard with it. You probably just need like what? Tiers. And then a little bit something else. Like I don't know, maybe with Lanford, I guess. And then maybe you'll max it out. But that just goes to show like in general, the insane damage that you can do with it. Very good for crowd control like that. So, overall, Seraphina is a character that everyone cannot use without the proper setup. In the right gear feels like a necessity to actually make this character work. So if you don't have equips like the Demon Slayer for example, so that she can apply more debuffs on her own, then it's going to be very difficult to play around her talents. And you want that too because the massive damage can be fine in like regular content, but in PvP, it's an instant kill. So you definitely want to play around it in that area. Her mobility is also an issue, so I can understand that a lot of people are not going to have the wings accessory and even apex boots, since those are extremely rare to get, so having the breeze enchant is mandatory. Her aftergain helps with that mobility issue, and even marks whatever target with the talent, so that's great. Even her AoE helps the debuff issue, you can apply 2 of them. It's her only skill that applies debuff, so it's going to be one of her best tools, as you can also attack very safe with it. That skill combined with the Demon Slayer and Miss Dancer or Elf Knight, you'll be able to get 4 debuffs right away. However, if you guys don't want to do the whole debuff thing, all because it's too much work, then going full damage is totally fine, since her 3C turns her into this AoE attacker, or better yet, a mixed attacker. Having clock on this is quite massive, or you can do Blazing Sun, so that you just do a bunch of damage. That kind of damage output kind of reminds me of Kiriko with her 3C. I say it's an AoE, but you can treat it like one, but not exactly. It does look like it though, but really it's just fixed damage. But the real issue is that the massive damage only works on enemies around that target that you're attacking. So it's really good around like turtle formation or like crowd control. That's what it's really good for. And if enemy doesn't do that, then it's like she's just a basic single target attacker. If we look away from her as a damage dealer, then you're going to be playing around her talent all the time, which sucks because, like I keep on reiterating, you need the proper equips, you need the proper soldier, and the right team. I do like Seraphina, I really do. I think her mechanic is very interesting. Playing around her talent is very worth it all the time, mostly in PvP. That instant death effect is really broken. But Seraphina herself just makes it really hard to actually achieve it. So she's really only more worth it as a veteran player, since you most likely have the characters and equipment to help with all of her issues. But as a newer player, I wouldn't even bother. For you guys, using her will feel very underwhelming. Alright, so that was Seraphina's showcase. If you're thinking about regular content, do not do it, period. Unless you just really like the character, then by all means, go for it. If you're thinking about her as an attacker, like you want to use her for somewhere, she is okay-ish. That's all I really have to say. She's meant for people who have played this game long enough that has the proper setup for her, like the equips, like the characters and stuff. And even then, I wouldn't go too crazy about her talent damage as well. That's something you really only consider in PvP, because it's totally different. It can be constant if you're taking her in like boss fights, so if you want to find a usage with that, then a place that I could recommend is somewhere like Ancient Beckoning. Situations like that, considering we're playing around her talent, you can pair her with Bernhard for the faction buff. You can also apply debuffs himself, SP Leon or Helena. Helena debuff is more consistent, so I recommend using her. And oh, Lucretia. She's gonna be amazing to pair with. Now I did only mention the Empire team right there, and that's because it feels more natural to use compared to her other factions. If you want to play around her 3C, well, let's see, so it can be fun to mess around with in areas like Timeless Trial, Dimensional Expedition, and maybe even Joint Battle too. In PvP, that's where her real strength lies in. Playing around her talent is something that you really want always. That instant death is really broken, so if you can get rid of those healers, and if you somehow get that to work, they'll have no choice but to take it. And I'm telling you, her 3C damage goes crazy. It's also where you see where her biggest weaknesses are, like not applying enough debuff on her own, and a really weak mobility. So you need the proper equipment, and not just only that, you need to ban healers too, because they can negate that main mechanic. These issues have a huge impact on her, which is why you don't see a lot of people use her. It's a lot to consider. Like Aeon Kama works really well with her. What if I don't get like Awakener, who can help apply debuffs and help Seraphina move in position? I seriously think that she does have potential, but she's more frustrating to use without any proper thinking. But that's all I got. If you guys did enjoy this video, feel free to leave a like, subscribe, want to see more, and feel free to let me know down in the comments how you guys feel about Seraphina, or if there was any more that you guys would like to add about her. Or yeah, thanks for watching. Your fellow Z.